Ma chère collègue, Madame Posey.
My dear colleague, thank you, and thank you, officials, for being here.
On law, and just quickly look at whether the way we structured Bill C-12 in the Net Zero Accountability Act is part of the problem. This goes back to Taylor's point about timelines. So if this is outside of anything you've studied, just stop me cold, but there are about 60 countries around the world with climate accountability acts. The most successful, I think, was probably, I would say, was the first, which was the UK, which brought in the Climate Accountability Act in 2008, where its first milestone year was 5 years later for 2013. There's milestone years, there's the same thing, 5 years from bringing it in. New Zealand, 5 years from bringing it in. Ireland, 5 years from bringing it in. Germany. I think we're the only country around the world that put our first milestone year so far out from when we brought the legislation in. And again, to the political horizon question, has your office or has anyone on your team looked at this as a fundamental problem with our accountability in that we deliberately and politically put the first test of accountability far away from the political decision makers who pass the law?
So we take our direction from Parliament, and it's up to parliamentarians like yourselves to choose collectively what is in a new piece of legislation and so on. But as I mentioned, lesson number 8 from our 2021 report does indicate that Canada struggled with addressing long-term problems. I've given one example actually from the UK, although I didn't mention it was from the UK in terms of carbon budgeting, and to bring a long-term problem into an annual deliverable. That's one example. Whether it's said in legislation or not is a question for parliamentarians, but creating yearly targets, whether it's by sector or globally, is one option.
And to your point, Mr. Commissioner, about setting the carbon budget and paying attention to where we are, these are, as you've noted in a number of reports, our failures to reduce emissions increase costs in not that far away time horizons. We're seeing and increased costs in climate events in Canada and increased risk to Canadians, and why adaptation plans are so significant. I just wanted to ask if you would agree that when we delay taking meaningful action, the steps we need to take to meet international and domestic goals, the costs go up in implementation, as do the risks.
Yes, from a global perspective, the longer that Canada and others do not make the transition towards a net zero economy and society, the larger the price tag will be for extreme weather events and so on.
Thank you, Ms. May. We'll go to Mr. Bachrach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been listening carefully